Actually, I remember when I quit drinking, was, it wasn't even planned at all. I was out celebrating two of my really good friends getting hired onto the fire department, and we were just out for, like a celebratory drink at a neighborhood bar, and I remember I had 2 pints of Guinness, and I was, like, just finishing my second one, and I just put it down, and I just looked at it, I was like, "Huh, would you look at that? That was the last drink I'll ever have," and I just knew it, and I just was very deeply aware that I was done with it. I was like, "Oh, interesting." No, like, I didn't really say anything, I didn't tell anybody, I was just like, "Yeah, that's the last drink." And, yeah, and then I think that's when the awareness really started to shift, and that's when things started to get really interesting, talking about, like, when do you start to notice the misalignment because I've heard, like, awakening described in such a way where it's like you quit like, waking up, and of course, there are many levels of this, and, we're not claiming to be, like, awake or self-realized or anything, but for those who are listening or for those who know, like, what we're talking about when you start to notice, like, the script that everyone's following in this world, like, how it doesn't really make a lot of sense and how, our world is not really set up for everyone to be happy and at peace and satisfied with themselves. But it's kind of like I heard this analogy that it's kind of like quitting drinking, but you have to live the rest of your life in a bar where everyone's drunk and carrying on and behaving ridiculously.
Wow, that's
So
great.
like
I've never
literally,
heard that. I like that.
yeah. So it's like literally and figuratively because waking up is kind of like that where you're like out in the world and everyone's still behaving in these weird, kind of scripted ways and you're noticing it. And then also like literally being surrounded by people who are still drinking a lot and being in those spaces sober. But that was a part of it though. It was like once I stopped drinking, I started to just notice how when I was around my friends that were still drinking, I was like, man, they have the same conversation every time they're drinking. And I was like, "So yeah, that's exactly how I used to be. It's just talk about the same shit every time." And then, you just start to notice the patterns, and once you start to notice the patterns, if you follow that thread, at least in my experience and, like, the way I see it, you start to see the patterns everywhere and recognize that, like, you just zooming out from them and becoming detached from the patterns deepens the awareness in such a way